Good morning, I'm Karen Stout. I'm president at Montgomery County Community College, and I want to welcome you to our 20th annual Technology Day. I love the venue. We're right in the middle of where our students walk through in between classes, and I'm hoping that students will participate or at least lend an ear as they're going through the Park House area. I see some of them up in the upper deck up there. Thank you. I know you're not here for this necessarily, but you might participate, and it's fine. Welcome to the students over in the cafe area, Park Place. And we have Professor Paul Johnson's students. You want to raise your hand? Thank you for being here, doing this as a part of a class activity. So certainly technology in many ways is changing the way we teach, changing the way students learn. It's changing the way we send messages and the way we communicate. It's changing the way we brand our products and services, changing the way we deliver education and changing the way we deliver services to students, and changing the way that we live, and some even say changing the way that we think. I'm really proud at Montgomery County Community College because we're recognized nationally as a leader with the way that we've adopted technology and integrated technology into the way that we work here as a college. And just a couple of examples that will be profiled today, or one in particularly that will be profiled today, is the work we're doing with advising redesign and working with 3 technology vendors to try to pull together an experience really for our students and faculty to support our student success and completion initiatives. But there's a lot of innovation, including the way faculty has taken the lead in moving forward our virtual campus and the way faculty uses technology in the classroom, whether it be a face-to-face traditional class or a hybrid class or a fully online class. Even with all of that innovation, I know we are still here to learn, and maybe some of us are here to cope with the way that technology is changing our lives. One of the things that's interesting is that I think technology, I'm hearing something in the background, and I'm wondering whether my brain is compartmentalizing itself here, but I see Greg working on that. Thank you. It's sending us contradictory messages. There's a power to technology, and there's a potential to technology, and both the power and the potential is contradictory. And so what do I mean by that? Well, just doing a quick scan this week of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, let me just give you a couple of those messages about technology and the power of technology. I don't know how many of you saw the article in the Sunday New York Times called "To Surrey with Love." Anybody see that article? And really gets to, I think, the potential of technology to reach people in ways that we never could reach people before. And the story was really about an autistic child and the autistic child's relationship with Siri, and that Siri had become a friend to this young boy, and that technology was telling a different side to its story through this friendship, a story of the power of technology. And just a couple of things from that story. Siri, while it can't pick up on social cues, can teach things like etiquette and presence and being polite. And it can be a companion in some respects. One of the stories is that the young boy says to Siri, let me pull from the quote, says to Siri, "Siri, will you marry me?" And Siri says back, "I'm not the marrying kind." And the young boy says back, "I mean, not now. I'm a kid. I mean, when I'm grown up." And Siri says, "My end user agreement does not include marriage." And the young boy says, "Oh, okay." And then later he continues the conversation with Siri. He says, "Good night, Siri. Will you sleep well tonight?" And Siri says, "I don't need much sleep, but it's nice of you to ask." So that just the power of that type of communication, and the mother saying, now when I leave the house in the morning, my son says to me, "Mom, you are beautiful today." And she says, I know that he learned that from his interaction with Siri, that Siri somehow helped him to understand etiquette and just overall being polite. And another part of the story that's very touching is that she gave him an iPod for his birthday, and he listened to the iPod always at home. But there was one exception. So he never took it with him in the car or anywhere they went except for one place. He took it with him to the Apple store. And so she asked him, why do you take this with you to the Apple store? And he said, so it can visit its friends. So that's kind of, that's one side of technology showing the power of it. And then there's the other side in the New York Times Sunday paper. The article is called Trying to Live in the Moment and Not on the Phone. Now this is a story that's filled with contradictions because it talks about how we've become addicted to our phones. And it talks about this new mobile app. And the mobile app is called Moment. So there's this mobile app called Moment, and you can download it, and it will track how often you're on your phone. And then you can go back to the app, and you can look at how addicted you really are to your phone. So you have analytics about your addiction. And so you can begin to monitor your addiction using the thing you're addicted to. So it really doesn't make a lot of sense. But it did remind me of my Fitbit that I have on, that I monitor all the time, and the power of analytics. But that was a little bit contradictory. And then yesterday's Wall Street Journal had this great article about the National Football League and the generational divide in the players in the National Football League because playbooks in binders no longer exist. Now all NFL players have to use a tablet to look up, to pay attention with the playbooks. And of course now the playbooks are much more interactive because the video's streamed in and they have it right there and they're using their tablets constantly. And that the most popular players now off the field are those that have a power cord. Because so many of the older players forget to keep their tablets charged. And that there's this large generational divide, and they're not quite sure whether to go back to the paper playbooks or how to manage that generational divide. And that really resonated with me when you think about a workforce and a generational divide in the workforce, and then you think about in the classroom and just the generational divide that can sometimes exist in the classroom. So we have all of those kind of contradictory messages and all of that potential. So that brings us here today. And I'm hoping, and I know that I'm hoping to learn, one thing that will help me be a little bit more productive with the technology. And I'm also hoping that I take something away that helps me think about how we can better use technology to support the college's overall goal, which is to support student success, some new idea. There's lots of presentations today, and I think that the committee has done a great job pulling together the program. I get the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker for today. And our keynote speaker has a great relationship with Montgomery County Community College because he's an alum. He's also a member of the Alumni Hall of Fame, being recognized with a Rising Star Award. He's a 2007 graduate. He was the 2007 student commencement speaker. Some of you may still remember Quan Murrow's inspiring speech that evening, probably one of the best student speeches that I've ever heard. Currently, he is serving on the college's foundation board, and he's the owner of KM Digital Relations. And he's going to talk today about digital and social technologies and how they influence students in education. A little bit more about Quan. In addition to being a 2007 graduate of the college, when he was here, he served as vice president of the student government and chapter vice president of Phi Beta Lambda, the country's largest student business organization in the world. He won the state and national public speaking championships while enrolled and was our commencement speaker in 2007. After graduating, he transferred to Penn State Abingdon, and he graduated with degrees in corporate communications and business. He's been involved with internet marketing and communications since 2001. Upon graduation, he spent 5 years working at public relations firms where he played an instrumental role in building and expanding social and digital media practices. And in this role, he worked with a variety of clients from startups to higher education to Fortune 50 companies. He's on the bleeding edge of the social and digital technology revolution. Currently, Quan owns KM Digital Relations, and during this keynote address, he's going to really help us understand the impact that digital and social technologies have on students, have on education, and hopefully we'll learn some best practices from Quan. It's my pleasure to welcome Quan Murrow. Come on up, Quan.
Good morning, everyone. In this technology conference with computers and screens, I'm going to pull out some paper. It's great to be here this morning. As Dr. Stout said, I've been really involved with the college for going on a decade now, including my enrollment. And one of the reasons that I've stayed so involved at Montco is because of the approach to education. And this isn't a commercial about Montco. You know, many the educational institutions that you're involved with also, you know, may take this approach, but the fluid, the dynamic approach to education that kind of has a real-time effect to it that prepares students to come out here and thrive in our quickly evolving world. And so when I was asked to come here and speak this morning, I was very excited because this brings together three of the topics that I'm most passionate about. And that's technology, education, and this concept of progress in general. And you know, while I was here at Montco, I think one of the most important things that happened and that I want to help convey is this foundation that was set for me to go out in a world and really kind of conquer new challenges. So the technologies and the skills that I use in my job today or that I used when I left school, they didn't exist while I was here. And so it was really more about setting a mindset, kind of a frame to go out and look at the world. And that's a big part of the message today. When I left Montco, as Dr. Stout had said, I went to Penn State and then I graduated, and I was blessed to be able to get a job at Philly's largest public relations firm. And this is 2008, 2009. The world was crumbling, Lehman Brothers, the recession, you know, all of this stuff. So I was very fortunate. But it was also a time that we saw this tipping point of social and digital media, social and digital technologies, and businesses saying we need to start leveraging these technologies. Of course, there were companies that maybe had blogs or were using Facebook before 2008, 2009, but that year was really the tipping point. You would walk into Barnes & Nobles and they had business trends, and you know, every book on that shelf would be about social and digital media. And so it was an exciting journey as I got to work with many, many different companies from all industries of all sizes, whether it's healthcare, enterprise technology, consumer goods, education. And so by working with these companies, my job was to leverage social technologies to go out here and help them kind of adapt to these changes and be able to communicate with the people that were out here using these platforms. What are they interested in? Who are they talking to? Who's influencing them? What's a competition that maybe we didn't think of as a direct competitor? What's the Twitter on culture as opposed to LinkedIn? How can we use this for market research and product development? and do competitive research to see what others are doing and where we should be. And a big part of this was working with education institutions who kind of had some of the same questions. You know, when you're trying to reach students, how can we influence these students? What are their biggest concerns? How do we prepare them for a 21st century education? What are some of the things that we can be doing now to connect with them and help set this foundation? How can we be a resource to them? And so I did quite a bit of research into this and studying the student, the modern student. And so when I was asked to come and speak this morning, I thought, how can I combine this experience that I've had as a front row passenger, dare I say at times a co-pilot in this digital revolution? How can I combine my experience from working with educational institutions? How can I interweave some of my passion for human development, human achievement in this concept of progress in order to potentially shape or influence or give you a way of thinking about this preparation that our students must undergo in order to succeed in this constantly evolving, rapidly changing world? And I came to the conclusion that I could do for you what I've done for so many businesses before, and that's kind of paint a picture of this world that the students are in and how this world is shaping their paradigm and how they're viewing the world. And then I could talk a little bit about the future, the challenges, and the opportunities, bearing in mind that that future is happening now. And then finally leave you with a few suggestions, a few recommendations, my thoughts on how to best do that. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to go in reverse chronological order of the title of my talk, How to Prepare Students for a Future Happening Now. And we'll start with happening now, look at the future, and then talk about preparing students. Does that sound like a plan? We are living in times of profound change. This is one of the most amazing, one of the most exciting moments in all of human history. Never has the distance between imagination and creation been so narrow. We now have the power to build the world that we want to see. What Leonardo da Vinci could only sketch, we can now build, probably with a 3D printer, but we can now build. But these opportunities that we have also present us with perilous and polarizing challenges. Students face the prospect of a continuing wealth gap because of a continuing jobs gap, because of a continuing skills gap. The stakes have never been higher. And I'm going to focus a lot on the students and how we can prepare them, but living in these times and with these amazing opportunities, with the tools and access that we have before us, you know, I also want to point out that it's on all of you, educators, students, faculty, it's on all of you also to jump into this digital revolution, to start helping us write the rules and lay the foundation of changes that are surely to have an impact at least over the next century and beyond. But more importantly, as we're influencing these students, it is on us to be the catalyst, the inspiration, the guidance, to prepare today's students to come out here and really leverage what we have at our fingertips, to take advantage of the moments that we're living in, to be creators, to be innovators, and to solve some of the challenges that we are and that we will continue to face. You know, I just want to touch on it quickly, but I see too often, you can do a simple Google search, all of these articles about, is education worth it? Do students really need an education? And a lot of this is driven from the recession. You know, a lot of it, you got to think about these students who are asking these questions and these reporters. You know, they're looking at a world where Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of college and built these billion-dollar human experience changing enterprises. And they're saying, why can I do it? But the story that's not getting told as much is the absolute passion that Steve Jobs had for the liberal arts education and how he talks so often about how that interweaves with everything from the iPhone 6, the iPad, the Mac. He talks about this intersection of technology and a liberal arts education. They don't talk about how Mark Zuckerberg donates hundreds of millions of dollars to education. They understand the importance of it. And, you know, on the internet, we see it's magnified as if it's some big trend of people questioning the value of education. But at its core, at least on an internet level, there is what some would call beginning to be a PR problem. Can the schools, can the institutions of today prepare our students for this world that they're going out to? And we all know the answer to that. Of course we can. Of course we will. Of course we are. Looking at the students, the millennials of today, I mean, if you're like me, if you've been overwhelmed by the trillion websites out there, 100 million blogs, 4.75 billion pieces of content that is shared every day on Facebook, 500 million tweets every day, 24 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube every minute. We have 500 channels, a 24-hour news cycle. You know, if you've been overwhelmed in this information overload, as most of us have, let's take a second to step back and look at the 50,000-foot overview of this world that our students are in, that they're going into, but that they're currently surrounded by. Because to us, these are big changes. These are game-shifting changes, but to them, it's normal, everyday life. So let's stick with that information overload for a second. The amount of information that is available to us today is simply just unprecedented. You can go out into the Amazon, into the most remote parts of the Amazon, and come in contact with one of these tribes that's never been in contact with the outside world, and give them an internet-connected smartphone, and they have more knowledge at their fingertips than Bill Clinton did during his entire presidency. To say that this is an information age is a total understatement. At minimum, we're living in a data economy. You may have heard that a week of the New York Times contains more information than a person in the 18th century was likely to come across in an entire lifetime. This year alone, we're going to create 3.5 zettabytes, that's 35 with 21 zeros following it, of information. That's more information than has been created in the past 5,000 years. All of our science, our literature, all of the knowledge. In 1900, human knowledge doubled about every 100 years. In 2014, it's about every 13 months. Some people speculate that by 2020, the amount of knowledge in the world will be doubling every 12 hours. And if you're wondering, a lot of that's because we have more content creators. We have more people tweeting. We have more people writing. We have more people producing things. But every 12 hours. And this is especially true in the technical fields. So if information is doubling now every 1 to 2 years, what implication does this have on the students that we're trying to educate to go out here into this world? If you're a technical student, there's a chance that what you learn as a freshman could be outdated by the time you're a junior. You know, obviously there are some principles and some things that are everlasting, but that's a real threat. What is the value add in a Wikipedia world? So when we look at students in the world that they're in, we see that they are inundated with information. And so we are no longer just providing them with information, it's the meaning behind it. It's helping them establish a mindset to be able to take in and interpret and be able to leverage and strategically use this information. And then the world that they're in is more connected than it's ever been. And this is clear. You know, for radio, it took 38 years to reach 50 million people. As far as 50 million people using the radio, 38 years. For this latest version of Angry Birds, it took 35 days. Look at this connectedness. Look at the movements that we're starting to see online. Think about the election of President Obama and how that was an online revolution. The Arab Spring. Think about most recently the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Can you imagine if someone time warped here from 10, 15 years ago, telling them how we raised millions of dollars by dumping buckets of ice on our head? It's a very, very connected world that provides lots of opportunity to build movements, to share information, to share ideas. And then you combine that with the fact that the U.S. Department of Labor says that by the time today's students are 38 years old, they will have had 10 different jobs. It's a mobile world. So again, how do we prepare? How do we lay a foundation for someone who will have 10 different jobs? How do we educate them by 10 different jobs by the time they're 38? And today's students are witnessing industry disruptions like never before. But the thing is that they don't realize that these are industry disruptions. This is normal for them. How many of you have ever used Uber? Has anyone used Uber? So it's a smartphone app where you can order, if you will, for lack of a better word, a personal driver, a taxi. Uber is now valued at $17 billion. Smartphone app that calls a taxi, a personal taxi. That's driving. Southwest Airlines is $14 billion. How is this new startup mobile phone app worth more than Southwest Airlines? Xerox, who helped usher in this whole digital revolution we're going through, Uber is valued at more than Xerox, more than Macy's. And some are calling it the Uberification of society because we're starting to see this more in groceries, in healthcare, movie tickets, concert tickets, this personalized approach. Or where Airbnb is shaking up the entire hotel industry. I was in an Airbnb just a few days ago. So Airbnb is where people rent out their homes for 1 night, 3 nights, 5 nights. So you have hotel executives that are beside themselves, pulling out their hair thinking, how do we compete in a world where someone can use their mobile phone and rent an entire home for the same amount that we're charging for a single hotel room. Industry disruptions. Let's go broader than that. Look at the advances in healthcare, whether it's in healthcare technology, whether it's in disease advancement and cures. I mean, who would have ever thought that we would be using Twitter to diagnose and track epidemics? Finance, the world of business financing, it's totally changing. If you're familiar with Kickstarter, you can come on here and you can list a product or give your business idea, a music project, a video, whatever it is, and crowdfund that to where everyday Joes can log on and back your idea. And some of these projects and businesses are raising millions of dollars, completely sidestepping financial institutions. You have credit cards and the new iPhone 6 and the mobile payment system. Disruption. Do we need to get into the publishing with Amazon Kindle or the media, how newspapers are in decline? Look at the access that people have. You know, think about it if you wanted to reach millions of people just 10 years ago. Now you can create a viral YouTube video or a blog or Facebook. Industries are totally being disrupted, but for our students, it's just another post that they may see coming through their Facebook feed. Just another story about a cool new technology. But on the business level and on the education level, it's totally redefining how we must prepare our students. How do we prepare our students for a world for these changes that the world is still grappling with? How do we prepare them to go out here and thrive when we haven't even got our heads wrapped around this shift that we're undergoing because it's still ongoing? These are some of the challenges that we face and that we will overcome so that there is undoubtedly no question about whether there is value in today's education. And it's not just on us to produce creators and produce innovators. We have to also think about producing problem solvers. I mean, as these advances, as we are becoming more connected, it's really bringing about some issues. I mean, our world is literally running out of resources. In the next 20 years, we're slated to add 2 billion people to the world population. Of all these facts, that one may be the hardest for me to really fathom. 2 billion people to the world. How are we going to feed this world? How are we going to power this world? How are we going to sustain this world without disrupting the nature's ecosystem? And we're already seeing that, about how many of the Earth species have disappeared over the past 50 years. I think it was a story that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago. Look at the state of human health. I mean, do I have to talk about Ebola? Look how many of these different types of diseases and conditions that are immune to our immune system, resistant to our immune system, that have just, over the past few years. MRSA, pig flu, swine flu, avian flu. And so when we think about preparing students, it's not just about being in a lab and creating new drugs and creating new treatments. It's also things about how do we make this healthcare accessible to everyone. Politics aside, but if you're going to stop the next plague from coming through, you're going to have to make the preventative treatments available to everyone. How do we leverage these connected technologies, Twitters, or this connected world to build compliance and best practices? So now you're starting to get into that liberal arts, that humanities part of what's traditionally been science and medicine. But these are some of the things that we have to start thinking about. How do we prepare the mindset of these students as they go into these fields? And with this connected world, And speaking of progress, you know, travel is easier than it's ever been. People are globe trotting. We're seeing a mix of information, ideas, of philosophy, a mass blending of cultures that we've never seen on a scale before. How do we start to create environments that are healthy for social cultural exchange? How do we start using these technologies or this mindset to start to thwart geopolitical problems 10, 20 years from now? How can we start preparing our students now to prevent terrorists from springing up 10, 20 years ago? Politics and war and military aside, how can, with this mass blending, because there's going to be some people that feel abandoned, that don't feel part of the mainstream, and this is going to continue to produce the types of people that we're working hard, these terrorists and things that we're working so hard to get rid of. So how do we prepare students for this huge cultural exchange of ideas and philosophies and mass cultural movements that's going on now? Under these conditions, the future of law, of medicine, of engineering, of agriculture, they must be completely redefined. They are being completely redefined. Science and technology can help us tackle many of these most pressing problems, but science and technology are words. It's the students behind the science and technology. It's the passion that they have for the field. Today we have to embrace a forward-leaning education that helps students ask the right questions to thwart problems before we even know that they're problems, so that we can redefine medicine, create abundant industry, create abundant energy, so that we can safely build this artificial intelligence that's going to power our machines and computers in the future, so that we can redefine the global transportation infrastructure. So, given this backdrop, I mean, I don't want to cry that the sky is falling. We're really living in an amazing time in history, but failing to create a new way of learning, a forward-leaning way of learning, could be a national, dare I say, global disaster. How's that for the weight of the world on your shoulders? And, you know, as this conference proves it, you know, we're embracing these changes, we're embracing these challenges, we're looking for the new technologies, but still, far too often, we are preparing students for a world that simply does not exist anymore. As I said, when I started college, the job that I got when I finished college, it did not exist when I first started. The jobs that these students will have, they don't exist now. And if they do exist, they're going to be totally transformed by the time these students are climbing the career ladder and stepping into leadership positions. The top 10 jobs of 2015, they didn't exist in 2005. Educators understand that we are preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet, using technologies that haven't been created yet in order to solve problems that the world doesn't even know are problems yet. Foundation, mindset. How do we prepare our students for this? We are the catalyst for this. To become a chef, a lawyer, an engineer, architect, you know, in days past, we would find out the why, what they did, how they did it. We knew that there was a predefined path to that destination to become a chef, a lawyer, an engineer. You'd go K through 12, high school to college, in some cases college to graduation. And you would get the degree, get the job, and that's pretty much what you would do for the rest of your career. But now we are in a very fluid and dynamic changing world where, again, if they're even in the same jobs or even keep the same jobs or career, it's going to be quickly evolving. I was talking to an institution about the new medical coding programs and some of the new standards that's coming out. And they're going from what's called I-9 to I-10 in the coding standards, which takes the amount of codes that someone needs to know from 17,000 to 140,000. And this is just happening. You know, that's shaking up the industry in itself, because now the productivity is low and there's a huge demand there. But changes at any moment, they're going to continue happening and influencing our students and their careers. Something's got to give. Education is going to change. It's a matter of, are we going to influence that change? Are students going to be logging on to these MOOCs? Are they going to think that they can learn how to code and become the next Mark Zuckerberg? Or are they going to come to our institutions and get that foundation that we all know is so critical for lifelong success, no matter what field you end up going into?